Haley
Hello.
Swindal, hello, and welcome to West End Best Friend. How are you doing, my lovely?
I'm great. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. It was really exciting. You're our first Broadway interview, so thank you so much for getting
I
on.
feel so honored. Thank you.
You're our number one.
Wow.
That's it. You're going down in history now, my love. You're our West End Best Friend's first number one Broadway interview. Haley, let's just get stuck in. Stagey life. You, as an actor, has that always been in your blood?
I have been singing since the time I could walk. I mean, my entire life I've been singing and performing, and I come from a family that doesn't sing at all. They're actually in the sports industry in America. So, you know, there would be like baseball games going on in the background and I would be singing, "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." So they were just baffled by me. When I graduated college, I moved to New York City, and the first audition that I went to was Jesus Christ Superstar, starring Ted Neely, who was the guy that played it in the movie, and I booked the national tour of that show with him. I was the understudy to Mary Magdalene because it was already cast, and I was taller than Ted. So I couldn't really play Mary, but I did get to go on a bunch, and that was my first job, and the rest was history. Kind of after that, it was like a lot of tours, and then I came in and started doing Broadway, and I've loved it. I've loved having a career on Broadway and in the theater, and I can't imagine doing anything else. I've branched out to kind of do cabaret and some producing and all that, but it's all centered around a life and love of live performance, for sure.
What was your gateway musical? What was the first musical that you properly listened to and you were like, oh my God, what is this?
That I listened to or that I saw?
Ooh, okay, both. Go Saw first.
Okay. Saw, I remember my family brought me to see The Secret Garden in New York City when I was probably like 9. I was young. I remember seeing it, and actually my daughter's named Lily after
Lily's Hazel Eyes.
Because of that show, and I ended up doing Secret Garden at the Lincoln Center in New York when I was 6 months pregnant with my daughter. So I named her Lily after that show because it was the first show that I saw, and listened to the soundtrack. For me, it was the 90s, right? I was growing up in the 90s, so it was really a lot of Frank Wildhorn music. Linda Eder singing Someone Like You and all that stuff, as well as the standards. I've always loved like Liza Minnelli.
Yes.
And in hearing the soundtrack of Candor and Ebb and Cabaret, as well as the Great American Songbook, right? So hearing all of those, Harold Arlen and Rodgers and Hammerstein, all of that songbook as well. I loved listening to all of it. So I know there's not like really one thing, but I guess if I had to pick two, it would be Secret Garden and Jekyll and Hyde. Those were the two that I was like, wow, hearing Linda Eder sing Someone Like You, I want to sing like that.
Life changing. Yeah, I know. I'm a massive Wildhorn fan. I remember the first time personally I listened to Scarlet Pimpernel. I was like, what is this? I have to do the show. And we've still never had a UK premiere. Criminal.
I'll call him and tell him he has to get it there. He's in Hawaii right now.
So what was it like for you then? As an actor, we see these shows that we're inspired by, and you've mentioned Secret Garden then, which you did, but you've also done Jekyll and Hyde as well. So what was it like for you to be part of the shows that so kind of formed who you are and wanted to be as an artist?
It was really magical. For me, it was really getting to collaborate with Frank, and my collaboration with Frank was even longer than doing Jekyll and Hyde. I have worked with him kind of ever since on really a lot of his new material. At one point, I performed with him at Birdland. His wife is Japanese, and I sang Bring on the Men in English, and she sang it in Japanese, and then I did a little Japanese, she did a little English. So there's been like a huge collaboration just to getting together in a studio and me singing some of his new songs. I was one of the first people to sing some of his Mata Hari in English and stuff like that. So it's been a lifelong kind of collaboration that started with Jekyll and Hyde. And so that's really magical because this is a composer who my whole life I've been like, wow, this is Broadway. Like, growing up in the 90s, that was Broadway. He had Civil War, Scarlet Pimpernel, and Jekyll and Hyde at the same time, right? I love Weber, but what I was kind of after, I've always loved Evita, but that was before I was born. So when I was in New York, it was Phantom, and I've never really been a soprano, so I love Phantom, but my eyes were never really set on that show. So they were really set on, Marguerite and Pimpernel and the female world. So I was like, whew, I was just fascinated by it. And I started when I was in for Wonderland, which I didn't end up booking. But then I ended up getting Jekyll because of it. It was an ensemble role. It wasn't a big role, but I didn't really care because it was my Broadway debut. It was kind of my first venture into the Broadway community. I was the dance captain, which is hilarious because I am an actor who sings and really sometimes have two left feet. But I worked so hard, and I did, I think, a great job with it. There's not a whole lot of dance in Jekyll and Hyde, so it wasn't the hardest job, but I did work really, really hard on it, and it was a leadership position, and I was honored to be a part of it. And Constantine Maroulis and Deborah Cox really led that company. That to be my first Broadway show was like really magical for me.
What a show. What a show. That's incredible. I love that. I mean, you've also mentioned then that you've done a lot of cabarets with Frank and collaborating, but just cabarets in general. What's that life kind of like when that night is about singers coming together to sing different work and it's not necessarily a show? And I just feel there's this incredible sense of unity and love in cabarets. I think they're a very special art form.
Well, I started doing it when I was in Jekyll and Hyde, when I was the swing, which is, I don't know if you guys, it's the same thing over there, but for us on the road, it's, first of all, I believe that the swings are the hardest working people in the entire business. I don't know how to do it. I did it one time. I don't think I could ever do it again. I'm terrible at it. And I'm glad I did it. It taught me so much. But the ensemble and the swings, I think it's the hardest job in the world, because it's like, you have to create a character. You don't have the material to create that character. You don't want to detract from the leads, but you want to become an individual and create. So I think it's, you know, they're the hardest working people in business. But anyways, so when I was swinging Jekyll and Hyde on the road, when you're on the road, all you really have is the show, right? And the people in the show. So when you're not performing, I was having a really tough time with that, because it's like, I was single, I was on the road, and I'm not in the show. So I'm just kind of sitting there. So I said, okay, well, my eye is on the prize. I'm going to be to Broadway in 7 months. I'm going to be back home. What can I work on right now for my artistic expression that I can really kind of find who I am and how I want to express myself? Because so much of the time as actors, it's like you're in this box and you're this type and you have to be this. And that's when I really started saying, what do I want to say? And what do I want to be able to give? So I started working on a show, and that was my first kind of cabaret. Whether or not it was really a cabaret, I'm not really sure, but it was my first venture into that world. And I worked on it for like 6 months. What would the material be? What do I want to say? And when I came into New York City, I did my Broadway debut. And then about 4 or 5 months later, I made my debut of that show called Play to Win, which was just about my own experience and my family's life. And my grandfather was very, very famous here. He was the owner of the New York Yankees, and he passed away, which is a big sports team here. And the show itself was about really charting my own path, because who I am and how I took what I learned from being from that family and creating my own world and my own destiny. And I feel like that was a really great show coming out of the gate for me. Hi, I am this person from this family who you all know, but I'm actually going to go over here and audition at non-union open calls and create my own life. And here's my story. And so that's kind of how I came out of the gate, really. Then after that, it just kind of became about when I was not doing a Broadway show, or I felt like I had something else to say right after I had a baby. And then I did a tribute to Liza Minnelli, who I've always loved. She gave me her blessing to do her songbook. So I did her songbook my way, but her songs. And I had 2 backup dancers, and it was great. And then I did another show with Broadway's Jana Robbins, who was one of the Mama Roses. She stood by for Tyne Daly, but she's the only standby that's ever gone on for Mama Rose in the history of Gypsy. So there's been like 5 Mama Roses and then Jana. So she went on for like 2 weeks in a row. She's amazing. She's done a million Broadway shows. But we did a Kendra and Em show together, a duo show, which was based, and right after that I booked Mama Morton. So we're working on, like, down the road, are we gonna do a Mama Rose and a Mama Morton show? Mamas. And then I did this most recent show, which I really felt was the most powerful, which I'll explain to you. But to me, my shows are really about whenever I have something to say or to give. And they're not just here's a bunch of songs. They mean something. They mean something to me. They mean something to the people who follow my work. They really are an event. Like, that's why for me doing this virtual thing was like, how do I make this still what those shows are? Like, I was the first person at 50, Stephen Sondheim, I was so blessed. He never had been to 54 Below in New York City, but he came to see my last show, Sing Happy, which I was so honored with. I try and make it a special night of theater in New York City. I try and make it a New York event where people are together and we're celebrating whatever the music is and whatever. I try and make it a special night and for us all to be together and celebrate each other. And I want people to feel somehow better after seeing the show than before they got there.
How did you find doing this concert? Because obviously the world's is in a crazily strange place. The West End's shut down. Broadway's also shut down. You can't be obviously at somewhere as awesome as Birdland to be able to do this concert, but you're doing it online. So how was that for you as a performer to create like a virtual concert? Because obviously a lot of cabaret and a lot of performing is about that like indescribable like cathartic exchange with the audience and that kind of like live feel of just really being there.
Well, we're all getting used to it, right? So if I hadn't had March until November to get used to even what we're doing right now and the readings and the like all the things that we're doing where we already are a little bit used to this different world that we're in, I think it kind of helped prepare me for what it was. But really the series itself is Birdland Jazz, which is a very, very big jazz and cabaret thing here in New York, had a series with a bunch of Broadway people that was really, they provided 3 cameras in their downstairs club where they do a lot of their stuff, and they produced and shot a full show, no audience. And then they released, so it's shot specifically for streaming. So like, you know, almost like an old Judy Garland special. Like you think about what it must have been like for those stars filming for those camera specials. It's not film, it's not television, it's not cabaret. Like, what is it? It's in this weird world as an actor where you're like, okay, I know how to go do a movie. I know that skill set. I know how to go be on a stage, but it's neither of those things. So, you know, you're singing, I'm singing to the camera, but, you know, as much as they can't prepare you for it, they can say, okay, this is what it is. You finish the first number, silence. And so you really just have to prepare yourself for it. So the first number was like, okay, that's weird. And maybe the first 3 or 4 numbers, it was weird. But when I really looked at I just really looked at the camera and remembered like all the people that I love that are usually there with me. And that really got me through the show. But it is a very different experience. You don't get the same adrenaline, kind of get the adrenaline when you're sitting at home watching in your pajamas, like commenting the night when you're watching yourself with your friends. You know, I'm like hosting the party and like commenting in the group, like, oh, thanks. Oh, wow. What did I do with that breath? Oh, that's funny. You know, I'm like teasing myself, you know, in the chat room. And then that night you have the adrenaline. But it's a very different experience. But I'm really, really glad I did it. And then I challenged myself to do it just because of what the show is.
You've spoken about the way when you create cabarets or performances that all the songs are very thought out. They're not just randomly placed. They're there for a reason. They mean something. What was it like creating with everything going on and everything that you've been through and everything that you wanted to say? How did you find choosing the songs for this particular show in your love letter to New York?
Well, New York has been through, as we all have, but New York has been through a lot. New York was hit very, very, very hard with the coronavirus in March. Our industry shut down. The city has been through a lot, and our industry has been through a lot, and it's been shut down since March. It hasn't even tried to come back even a little bit, and with no promise of even beginning to come back, at least and probably until fall. And the community of theater people that have become my family, that I love, and New York. I have fallen in love with New York. It is my home. It has given me, as I say in the show, my strength, my joy for life, and my style, all of that. I just wanted to be able to give back a little to the people and to the city that have made my life. I was always going to do this as a benefit for the Actors Fund, which is really helping people right now in our industry. But when I was looking at the content for the show, it was really about, it's not just going to be New York song, New York song, New York song, New York. It's not going to be like that. There are some New York songs. I mean, it starts with New York State of Mind, but and interwoven throughout, but different songs that with a mood or another remind me and might remind the audience in one way or another of my experience of falling in love with or falling in love in New York City. I filmed the show 2 days after the election. I start the show with the beginning of Happy Days Are Here Again, just 8 bars, and it goes into Happy Days Are Here Again. Some folks like to get away, just straight into New York State of mind. And then it kind of progresses throughout my experience in New York. I sing Another 100 People from Company. And then it kind of goes into this love section where it has everything from Someone to Watch Over Me to Bob Dylan. I mean, it's got everything in there to make you feel my love. And then, then I go into kind of a New York movie medley, which kind of evokes feelings of everyone from all over the world who's seen the movies, from When Harry Met Sally to Breakfast at Tiffany's to Arthur, Moon River and Had to Be You. And then I kind of go back on my own path, and I did a song that I wrote for a friend of mine who, she was on a ventilator for 30 days from the coronavirus, and she lost her husband, but she survived, which is amazing. Like, she's a walking miracle. So I wrote this song, I'll Hold Your Hand in the Rain, which is basically about, I can't stop the storm and I can't stop the pain, but I can promise you that I'll hold your hand in the rain, which is kind of how I sort of end the show before I sing I Thank You and New York, New York. So all of these songs are interwoven to really create a piece of theater, which is specifically for the camera, that's nuanced for the camera and for the audience at home. I'm an actor first. I mean, I am a singer, of course, but if you can't tell a story, then why bother, right? So it really is crafted to be, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like Elaine Stritch and like those kind of one-woman shows that are really telling a story, even the Vegas acts of the old days, and like I go more towards those pieces of theater than an evening of just songs that don't matter. So I think that's really what I've tried to craft. It's just piano, but Scott Cady, who has played with Barbara Cook and B.B. Newirth and everybody, sounds like he's 10 instruments. And I'm like so lucky to work with him. He's my musical director one of my musical directors over at Chicago. It was really, really special to get to do this with him, and he's with me. He's like, yeah, this is like, a crazy experience, but we're going to do it. And so having him there with me to kind of breathe with me and get through the pauses and like, hold for light. Oh, sorry, Yeah,
how was that for you? Because I often think as performers, it's weird because very rarely, unless obviously we do a show that's filmed or we do TV or commercial, like we never see our own performances. And people are like, oh my God, you did such a great performance tonight. And I'm always like, oh, thank you, in the back of my mind.
You could have done the worst performance ever, and they tell you it was great. Like my friends who have seen multiple performances of me, and I could have like a really bad show. Like, oh, that was the best one yet.
Like, okay, well, I'm glad you think it. So what was it like for you to be able to have that moment like, oh my God, I actually haven't watched this?
Strange. I would much rather be doing it on stage. I mean, I did it because I wanted to like be able to host everyone in the chat room and say, I'm so thrilled and honored that you all are here. If you want to make a donation, I mean, their tickets went to Actors, but I wanted to make sure I thanked them for doing that, and to be able to feel like I was there with them and be with them and say hello. And I was there watching with my 4-year-old who was singing along with me. And I'm glad I was there, but I definitely preferred being on the stage, not watching myself. Like it's very strange watching myself. I'm not a fan.
You were Mama Morton in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Insane. What was that like to be in a show like Chicago, one of the longest running musicals in Broadway history, the longest running American revival in Broadway history, and to be Mama Morton, to have that principal role on stage in Chicago?
Amazing. I loved it. I mean, I started about a year and a half ago. It was sort of a long audition process because I am very young. I think I am the youngest in history in New York to play Mama Morton, but that's always kind of been my type. I'm waiting to like grow into play Mama Rose, right? So finally I'm the right age to like almost the right age to play all the roles I want to play. They knew I was right for Chicago, but they're like, is she a Roxy? Is she a mom? And I kept telling them, and my agents kept saying, yes, she's a mama, she's a mom. But I went through Roxy. Well, she's great, but she can dance, but she's not a Roxy. Yes, see her for Mama, see her for Mama. So eventually they saw me for Mama, and they were like, great, she's young, but let's see how it goes. And they give very short contracts. Let's try it for 2 weeks. And so it's like, okay, great, I'll take it. I'll prove myself into it. So I did 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks became, more and more and more, and it became over 100 shows last year. So I became kind of one of there's a few of the mamas that are in kind of the family. And I became one of those mamas, but it started as 2 weeks. They kind of were like, well, I don't know, we'll see. And then they, obviously I passed. So the test. And so I've been kind of going through they call me, they are always kind of, Chicago is in New York there aren't really long contracts with the principals so much because there's so many in and out stars as Roxy and Velma, they try and match. So there are like 3 mamas that kind of rotate in and out, and I'm one of those mamas. Natasha Yvette Williams, who's a genius, she did Waitress in London at one point. She's very, very different type than me, but she's one of the other mamas, and she's in there a lot, and then I'm in there a lot. So we kind of rotate, and it's really, really great. I've become part of the family, and I absolutely love it. It's amazing. It's such a rush, and getting not only to play that role, but also to be on stage, because the way it's staged, you're on the side of the stage for a lot of it. Getting to watch the dancing, like during the end of Roxy's monologue, I'm watching these guys dance, and I told one of the dancers, like, every time he does that, I'm like watching, Mikey is his name, and I'm like, every time I watch you do that move, and it's not even like some fancy move, it's just this one Fosse move, I'm like, oh, I'm in a Broadway show. Every single night I see him do that. Oh, this is Chicago on Broadway. This is Broadway, and you just, I have to like pinch myself because I'm sitting there and you're in character or whatever, but there's a good 20 minutes I'm sitting on the stage, like, because you're just watching the best dancers, and you're on stage with the best dancers in the world. And it's so funny because just the way you meet people, like Charlotte Dubois, like icon here, and I met her as Roxy when I slapped her butt, It was like in the scene, and it was like, I'm so sorry we had to meet that way. I didn't get to meet you before I went on stage. That's just how because there's so many Roxys and Velmas, sometimes you don't meet till you're on stage in the scene with them, and it was literally like, and off stage I was like, I'm so sorry I didn't introduce you. We didn't meet each other before I slapped you on the butt. Like, I probably should have introduced myself,
What an introduction. Haley, when soon when the world is right again, people are healthy, everyone's safe, and Broadway can reopen again, when you have time, what's the first show you're going to go and see?
Oh, and see. That's hard. I want to see Company. I didn't get to see the Company with the female Bobby, Katrina. I didn't get to see it, and I really want to see it.
I saw Company 4 times in London, so I can vouch that it's my favourite Sondheim. I just think it's perfect. So yeah, it's incredible, and that Broadway cast is stunning. Haley, thank you so much for coming and chatting to me today. I've absolutely loved it. You're an icon. Stay safe and keep being fantastic.
Thank you. And the show is streaming, I think, for like 3 more weeks on Broadway World if anyone wants.
Awesome. We will get the links in. We will pump it. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Take care. See you soon. Stay safe.
Bye.